Welcome to today's AM Minnesota program. My guest in the program today is Meg Moynihan, who's a Senior Advisor, Strategy and Innovation with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Meg, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Jerry. Good morning, everybody.
Well, this is Christmas time, very cheerful time, but it's not particularly cheerful for many farmers, and that's what we want to talk about today, and a program and things that the Minnesota Department of Agriculture is doing to try and help farmers during these stressful times. But first, Meg, tell the folks a little bit about yourself. Now, you and I have talked a few times in the past, and give me credit, I did remember, because the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, the Organic Conference, some of those things, we've done some interviews in the past because you were working with organic farmers and organic programs.
You know, it was such a good memory, Jerry. For about 10 or 15 years, I was the organic lady for Minnesota, and I worked with our organic program supporting organic farmers and people who were interested in thinking about going that direction. And let's see, in 2016, my husband and I encountered we encountered a farm crisis. We lost our milk market. We are organic dairy farmers, and the company that we were shipping to closed our route down, and we had no place to go with our milk. And much as the conventional market, there's kind of an oversupply right now in the organic market, and I thought to myself, well, I'm the organic lady. How hard can this be? I know everybody in the state. I'll make a few calls. I'll find out who's taking milk. And long story short, we dumped milk for 2 months. We finally got on a conventional truck. And so I entered the conventional market in 2016 when prices were about $13 a hundredweight. My husband left and went out to work off the farm. And I, who grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, ran this farm for 8 or 9 months by myself while we tried to figure out what we were going to do opportunity-wise. Do you sell the cows? Do you wait? You know, there's just this, I think farmers recognize that sometimes it's really hard to make decisions. You're paralyzed and not knowing what the opportunities would be. And so I am a first-hand participant in farm stress, anxiety, and so when I got back to the Department of Agriculture, we started talking about what I'd been seeing both on our farm and in my neighborhood and just people I know around the state farming, and realizing that stress issues are just on the rise. It's just incredible, the stress levels out here, and we thought, what is it that we can do to support farmers?
Well, the other tough part is it's even worse at this time of year. It's supposed to be such a joyous, happy time of year, family gatherings, and it just almost makes it worse for farmers at this time.
Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So many people have just real struggles with the holidays. And even if you love the holidays, you had a happy childhood and loved the holidays, somehow there can be pressures for a lot of people. The days are getting shorter. It's cold. Everything is breaking and falling apart, and chains are popping off of things. Waters are freezing, as you and I talked about this morning. And, we just got through that high of harvest. You're just going kind of hell-bent for leather and trying to get the crop in, get everything moved to town. And so there's that adrenaline rush. And when that stops, sometimes you have a little time to breathe, and you were so busy that you didn't realize that there were some really persistent issues on your mind. So I think, Jerry, there are a lot of things that people struggle with at this time of year.
Well, and I've noticed, too, during harvest, you're so focused on, like me, what I have to get done at the studio, then to get out to the farm, you're so focused on getting that crop harvested. All at once it's done, as you mentioned, the adrenaline goes to your shoes, and you're exhausted for a number of days, and all at once then you start thinking about what's coming up, and then it gets worse.
And then you think after the first of the year, now I'm going to have to start working on my taxes. Now I'm going to have to start talking to the bank again about next year, and it's just like I'm just exhausted.
Well, Meg, we have to take a short break for the markets. When we come back, then we want to talk about the new Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Farm and Rural Helpline. And also, apparently, there's a series, some trainings that have been developed, too, to help farmers and, more importantly, farm families with these stressful times. But first, we are going to take a short break for the markets, then we will continue with today's AM Minnesota program. The market update was sponsored by the KDHL Agri Boosters, including AgroConnor Crop Management Specialist, your Pioneer sales representative in the Faribault area. They are also a full-service ag retailer, herbicides, fertilizer, custom application, and all crop production products. Special prices are available on brand name and generic herbicides. Ask about the free customer appreciation gift. Give them a call, 507-384-9191. My guest in the program today is Meg Moynihan, who is a senior advisor, strategy and innovation with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Maggie, always kid during the program, it's never a good thing if the farm guy misses the farm markets, but all kidding aside, maybe it'd be good if we would just skip the market report once in a while, right?
Well, and as I sat here listening, the market report is about what's going on in Argentina, what's going on in China. I mean, we have so many factors that are just outside of our control. We've got the weather, we've got land values, we've got markets, we've got prices. It's just, sometimes it's overwhelming. And the last thing that farmers are whiners and complainers. I mean, farmers are about the toughest people out there, but you layer all of these different factors on top, and sometimes it just gets overwhelming.
And then think of the nightmares you mentioned you went through, that all at once you lost your market for your milk, and that happened to a number of other farmers too, with that trade tiff with Canada, and
absolutely it did. Yep.
And I thought about that as a former dairy farmer. I mean, that milk truck's got to be there every day, or certainly every other day, and all at once you find out there's no market. It's a nightmare.
Well, and dumping milk just week after week, emptying the bulk tank out and sending it down the road to Friends for Hogs, or just dumping it in the field, and it really knocked my husband for a loop. I mean, it was hard for me, but it was tremendously hard for him, and he finally said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I'm going back to an industry that values me. And he's an owner-operator and has moved household furniture as a contractor. And he got back in his truck and he said, I'm going to make some money and do what you want with the cows, basically. And so our story had a happy ending, thank goodness. And some of those dairy farmers did too. But, when you're in the middle of it, you just don't know which end is up.
Well, you didn't really do justice to what you went through, the psychological effects of things that were totally out of your control and unforeseen, and you feel like a failure. And why do we farm? I mean, when I was a dairy farmer, you had the gumption to get up in the middle of the night and go to the maternity pens and check those 4 or 5 cows, and one was calving and the leg was back. And because you had the dedication to get up when it was 20 below zero in the middle of the night and go out and check, you deliver that live calf and the mother cow is fine, and you watch that calf take its first breath. Or now I'm not a livestock farmer, but I plant the crop and I go out and I see that beautiful crop growing there, and I've controlled the weeds, and it's hard to describe what that feels like unless you're in it, and that makes the stress and the failure seem all the worse.
Well, it's almost like a seesaw. It's such a rich and rewarding life, and it's so full, and there's such variety every day. And a lot of times it's fun solving all these problems. It's fun doing all of the different activities until that moment that the scale tips and it's not fun anymore. And, things catch up with you. And, sometimes that's for a week, sometimes that's for a few months. We've got a lot of depression in this country, and farm families are no different. We've got a lot of, fractured family relationships in this country, and that's been increasing on farms. So they're just, I think there are an awful lot of factors. And like I say, this is not a pity party for farmers. Farmers are, I think I said before, about the toughest people you'll ever meet, but there comes a point at which you just don't know what to do. And I was talking to my veterinarian about that, and he said, in the middle of just these terribly low dairy prices, and I said, how are other folks doing, Dan? And he said, sometimes I walk onto a place, and he said, I can just tell that, the farmer just doesn't know what to do. I'm 55, do I continue? Do my kids want to do this? I'm looking at the debt that I have to service, and feeling like I don't know which direction to turn. And sometimes you need somebody to talk to about those things.
Well, that's a nice segue then into the Minnesota Department of Agriculture's Farm and Rural Helpline. Tell us about that and how it was developed and what sort of resources are available.
Well, this is a resource that's available to farmers and rural residents 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's free of charge. It's absolutely confidential. And we contract with a counseling agency that specializes in stress and crisis. So they deal with everything from depression to people who are contemplating suicide. They are equipped and educated about all of those factors, very compassionate people. And this is somebody that you can call and talk to whenever you need to about what is on your mind, or even if you don't really know how to get started. You know, sometimes you just feel, you know, there are things wrong. I can't sleep, or I'm sleeping all the time, or, you know, I can't get out of bed. I can't get my chores done. I'm worried. I feel like, you know, I don't really want to talk to my spouse about this. I don't want to talk to somebody in town. You know, where do I go? Sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger. I know that sounds funny, but it's true. And so this is somebody who's non-judgmental, who understands and has great compassion for people who are struggling, and can help you kind of make sense of what's going on. You know, sometimes you might need a resource. Sometimes maybe you're in the middle of some big, I hate to say it, but I hear about a lot of family fights over farmland when mom and dad pass on, and so maybe you need some good legal advice. And if it turns out that, you know, you need some technical help that those people aren't specialists in, they can help you figure out, well, here's a legal hotline that you can call to help find a lawyer. Or if you're facing a foreclosure issue or some other altercation with the bank, they could connect you with a farm advocate from our Farm Advocate program who can come out and meet with you and help you work through the details of the situation that you're struggling in. So there are some other resources there, but basically this is you can pick up the phone whenever you need to and call somebody who will listen and care about your problems.
And you mentioned 24 hours a day, because many times this becomes overwhelming at night when you can't sleep.
Yes. Or you have a little tiny sliver of time after dinner in the afternoon and you feel like you can pick up the phone then. It's available, and we want to stress that it's confidential. They don't track any calls. Now, when you call, they will say, could I have a first name? You can use your first name, or you can make up a first name if you want to. That's fine. If you're willing to give them a phone number, they would like to have that so they can call you back if something happens on the call and they get disconnected, but that's up to you. And they do not report, you know, that you're not calling the state of Minnesota, you're not calling China or, you know, a call center in India. You are calling some trained counselors that are just outside of St. Paul. I've been to the call center. It's very, very impressive. And they talk to people 24 hours a day.
Do they have resources then too, like maybe I'm so depressed that I can't get over this, and maybe with psychiatrists where sometimes medication can help too?
Well, they would talk to you about some strategies you could use. Maybe it's time to go and see your family doctor. I don't think people put enough, understand enough how much their family doctor can help with issues beyond, you know, my tummy's rumbling. But doctors are trained to do these sorts of things. Nurse practitioners, if you want to talk to a counselor, they can help you find counselors in the area. You know, sometimes people are worried about the basics of family living. Sometimes things get desperate, and you're having trouble with heat, or you're having trouble with food or senior care. You know, a lot of us have aging parents and aren't quite sure how we find resources to help with care for seniors. And so they can connect you with local resources, you know, in the county that know about those kinds of programs. And, you know, sometimes people just need a little help for a while. And you know, we've got such respect and compassion for our farmers that we want to make sure that they have everything they need. Interesting
little side note. Being a farmer, I wasn't home a whole lot last fall. Last weekend, I was home, and my wife loves to watch the different movies on the Hallmark Channel during Christmas. You know, all those Christmas movies.
Tearjerkers?
Yes, exactly. And there was one on yesterday. It was a single mom, divorced, and she was being evicted because she couldn't pay the rent, and two of the cutest little kids, and she couldn't even afford to buy a Christmas present for him. And it just tears your heart out, you know, that our families are suffering like this.
I was in my office at the Department of Agriculture yesterday, and the phone rang, and it was a banker, and it doesn't matter what bank it was, and I don't know where they were in Minnesota, but he had a client in his office, and he said, you know, I've been hearing about some work the department's doing about farm stress, and isn't there some hotline? He said, I've got a client I think that could use the hotline, and so I was delighted that he called, so we talked about that a little bit, and the client was right there in his office, and you know, whatever they had been talking about, it was the kind of thing that this was a resource that this farmer wanted to know more about. And I was just so thrilled to think that he was leaving. I'd heard his voice, so I know it was a he farmer and not a she farmer, but I was thrilled to know that he was going home with his phone number in his pocket, so he knew that he had somebody in his pocket that he could call when he needed to.
I think that's the toughest part of it, and kind of alludes back to what we were talking about, that special attachment we have to our livestock and our land. And all at once things aren't going well, and you can't afford to buy your kids Christmas presents, and you don't know how you're going to pay all the bills. And those thoughts maybe do start enter your mind about maybe my family would be better if I wasn't here.
And that those are very scary thoughts, and I think people have them. Many people have them from time to time, and that's something that is scary. And you definitely need to talk to somebody about. Maybe you have somebody in your community, a clergy person that you want to talk to. Maybe your best friend is someone you can talk to. Maybe the Farm and Rural Helpline is what you need. But there are people who care. And who love you and want the best for you and want you to succeed.
The cost on the families, you kind of alluded to it, but that I think is the biggest cost to the stress that farmers feel, because it's hard not to take it out on your wife or husband or your children.
Well, and Jerry, they're part of it. They are part of what's going on, and they have their own challenges in seeing these struggles and feeling like maybe they're not doing the right thing to help, or they don't know what the right thing is to do. They see mom or dad having a problem and want to know, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for the future? So the other thing that we encourage people to do is, if you see a family member or a neighbor struggling with issues and you don't really know what to do about that, maybe you don't know how to bring up the subject, you don't know how to talk about it, you can call the Farm and Rural Helpline and talk to those counselors and get some tips about that, about what is a non-judgmental way that I could just find out what's going on. How I happen to have a husband who struggles with depression, and when I was first married, it really knocked me for a loop, because I didn't know what to do. Do I talk to him? Do I not talk to him? Do I try to cheer him up? Do I yell at him? I didn't know what to do. And so I think that that family members deal with a lot of issues as well.
So family members might be just as important that they have this telephone number as well to call and help them deal with the issues. I
think it should be on everybody's refrigerator.
We better put that number up. I assume you have it, Meg.
I do have that number, as a matter of fact.
I almost would have bet the mortgage payment on that.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. It is toll free. It is 833-600-2670.
And you alluded to a really important point too, about that counselor there knows other levers to pull to help the individual person that called.
Yes, absolutely. Sometimes you need to talk about what's happening in your head or make sense of it, and sometimes it's what's happening in your body. Stress manifests itself in different people in different ways, and I'm the first one to tell you I am not a mental health professional, but I'm a human being, and I've experienced these things, and I've talked to lots and lots of other people that have, and sometimes you sleep all the time, sometimes you can't sleep, sometimes there's some sort of substance abuse that's involved, sometimes there's anger, sometimes there's sadness and crying. It's just, it can be all over the map, but it really can take a toll on you physically. I was listening to some information about farming in England, and I don't know if this is true. I think I would like to do a little research about this, but the researcher was talking about isolation, which is what a lot of farmers in Minnesota experience. It can be a very lonely job. And he said, isolation can be like smoking 12 cigarettes a day in terms of taking years off your life, because of the extra stress that it adds to you, human beings being social animals and farmers being so isolated. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it gave me pause to think about isolation in a new way in terms of a health risk.
It does sound logical to me, and so maybe even just going uptown to the coffee shop or the elevator to visit. I know some elevators, guys get together and play cards, or there's always a pickup card game going on, or just that socialization.
Absolutely. But, as you and I talked about before, a lot of even the principal operators working off the farm now. And so there may be less time for some of those social connections than there used to be. And so I think we need to think carefully about how could more of that happen. And, you know, are there people that you can call on the phone? Are there people that, I mean, some people love to text, and it's just fun to touch base and be able to text back and forth, kind of depending on how well your thumbs work, what generation you are. But having people that you can talk to, even if you're not talking to them about these heavy issues, you know, even if you're just talking to them about, you know, well, you know, I heard you took a load into the elevator, and what was your moisture level? You know, just touching base and just interacting as human beings.
I also heard that the Minnesota Department of Agriculture is developing some sort of trainings down on the farm supporting farmers in stressful times. What's that all about, Meg?
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking about that. We're thinking creatively about ways that we can offer support to farmers. And so the Farm and Rural Helpline is something that's very direct for them. But we also know that there are lots of people that serve farmers in different professional capacities. There are, you know, bankers, veterinarians, clergy, federal and state agency staff who interact with farmers on a regular basis and see farmers struggling, and they don't know what to do about it. They would like to help. They would like to be a sounding board, or they would like to know what resources are available to that farmer. So we're doing a series of workshops around the state for those professionals to help them understand more about the types of farm stresses that are going on, more about the resources in the community, more about what it's like. Sometimes they're in a very difficult position themselves of delivering difficult information to farmers, and that is a challenge to both people. So this is really trying to fortify them to be in a better position to assist, you know, to support, assist, and treat farmers respectfully and compassionately. And we haven't even really started promoting this very heavily, but I have 200 people, Jerry, who have signed up for these workshops, which just, I think, underscores the need that we suspected was out there. It's proving to be true.
Well, I think that goes to show what this world of agriculture that we're involved in is all about. When I was a full-time farmer, sure, I had business relationships with my co-op and my agronomist and the milk truck driver and the co-op, everything. But after a while, you're more than business associates. You also become friends.
Well, you do. You do, and I think it also points to the fact that people really do care. You know, these are all people that they could spend 3 hours of their life doing something else, but they are seeing farmers in distress, and they're saying, I wish I could do a better job of helping. You know, we're not going to turn everybody into, you know, they're not going to have a little couch that they bring out to the farm and say, lie down, I took a 3-hour training, I'm a psychologist now. But it's just knowing how to start a conversation, knowing how to, you know, suggest some resources if that's necessary. But sometimes you just need to be a better listener and give somebody 20 minutes of your time so that they can just talk. Sometimes that's the most important thing we can do. But we have some great resource people. Ted Matthews, who's a farm counselor who works all over the state, is going to be talking. Randy Willis, who works with the Sheriff's Association and is very good about dealing with stress and issues that kind of rise to a level of crisis, which sometimes happens. Michelle Page from the Farm Service Agency, who has been on both sides of both receiving and delivering difficult information to farmers. And I'll be there, too, talking about some of the research we've done into what's going on in the state and just talking about the things that you and I are talking about today.
So I assume those will be scheduled then after the holidays, and we'll find out more about times and dates?
Yes, we are working on a press release, but we have 6. They happen all over the state. They're free of charge. Farmers can come if they would like to. You know, a lot of farmers are interested in these issues, and they kind of act as peer mentors to their friends, and that's great. Our primary audience are, as I mentioned, the bankers, the vets. We have a lot of clergy signing up. I have people from electric co-ops who have signed up. I have healthcare providers that have signed up. Farm business management and extension educators are signing up. It's just this crop consultants signing up. Just this wide variety of people who want to be in a better position to offer farmers a helping hand.
You know, Meg, I had farmed full-time through the 80s, and I remember very distinctly, as if it was yesterday. I'm not going to say we are in the 80s again, but we don't know when things are going to get better. And I was at Farm Business Management variety plot meeting the other night, and the farm business management instructor there put one figure out that pretty much sums up the stress that we have out there. And he said the last 4 years, 50% of the farmers in this farm business group didn't generate enough income to pay all of their bills for 4 years in a row.
A lot of us are skating on some very thin financial ice.
And granted, we went into this for the most part with healthy balance sheets.
Mm-hmm.
The key that's keeping everybody going is land values are stable, so the equity is there, so the collateral is there to keep going, but you don't know when, and that's scary, and it wears on you.
It is, and you know, I think all of these multiple factors and the uncertainty and feeling so responsible. I mean, you feel an obligation to the people who settled your farm. You feel an obligation to your family and your animals and your soils and your community. And you think about how few factors you really have control over. I mean, can you control what the weather's doing in Argentina? No. So there are all of these uncertainties, and it's just difficult. And you add these, as you said, the financial difficulties and the low farm revenue for the past few years, and both on the crop and the livestock side. I mean, we don't have a sector that's doing well right now. And so I think understanding that we are all in this together and need to support each other.
That Farm and Rural Helpline, 833-600-2670. 24
hours a day, 7 days a week, free and confidential.
And if you're listening and you don't have a pen, I will post that on our website later on today. Someone is there 24 hours a day. And sometimes it's as simple as just having someone to talk to and say, this isn't all your fault, and let's see if we can figure out how to get through this.
Right. Absolutely. You can call as often as you need to, and give the number to other people as well.
I think that's something that everyone should have, and all the people that are working with farmers, because sometimes they are the first ones that can sense something is wrong.
Just like that banker when he picked up the phone and said, I heard there's a helpline. I've got a farmer who's interested in calling it, and I thought, hallelujah. That's why we're here.
Yeah. Well, Meg, I sure appreciate you coming on today, and we'll look forward to getting the dates and more information on the Down on the Farm supporting farmers in stressful times after the holidays.
Thank you for your interest and for covering this issue this morning and having this conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
And I hope you have a nice Christmas with your family, Meg, and we'll look forward to talking again after the holidays.
Be well, Jerry. Take care.
My guest in the program today was Meg Moynihan, who is the Senior Advisor, Strategy and Innovation with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. That helpline number, once again, 833-600-2670.